being taught right now. And actually, the course is really interesting. Only thing is, I found it very interesting, and maybe like it's like if you can spend systematically do it and spending a quality time systematically, I think the course is going to be really easy, and we can all finish the course very easy and comfortably, I think. And the course is really interesting. As I venture deeply, I think deeply and getting involved more, I think the course curriculum and whatever it is being taught or the procedure, everything is really interesting. And the way we explore the thing, as we explore more, we think we really come to know what the entire thing is, and the heart of Jesus in missionary heart, and going out and spreading the gospel and winning souls, how churches are planned, and entire thing revolving around the church. That is the beauty of it. Maybe we had a lot of ideas other than that, other than this, but as we venture into it, I really understand the entire thing is revolving and evolving out of the church, and that is really beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. That is fantastic. And I like the part that Pastor Bindu said about a lot of what we are doing, a good percentage of it is similar to what we are doing in the New Life Fellowship, which I totally agree with you. Pastor Sam and the other leaders, they may not have done this course or may not have known about this course, but they use the book of Acts. I know Pastor Sam was using the book of Acts, and they continue to do what Christ had called them to do. We were doing it more out of modeling, people modeling it, and we were taking it and doing. Now, just apart from a model, there is also a curriculum that will teach you how to go about it. So it is about, like we have the hardware, which is the church, and we now got an excellent software that can drive the whole this thing along the lines of the vision and mission and of the New Life Fellowship, which is fantastic. I mean, I think earlier it was informal. Now we have a non-formal curriculum. Informal, our pastors were sharing their lives and teaching as we were going through ministry. Pastor Sam used to, meet us personally or in our trust meetings or in our leadership meetings, and he would meet regions and he would share the vision. The teaching was going on probably like that. But now we have a system, curriculum that if you were to use, it would take people along the same journey with accreditation. So that definitely, I think, is a fantastic paradigm. Anybody else would like to comment on this?
There are three things I wanted to speak about this. One is it takes you back to history. I was reading all those articles about the first missionary to India. I never knew this German guy was the one who came in Tamil Nadu. So then, the thing is, when I re-looked at it, I saw the commitment this man had to come down to a place that he would not know, and then, give his, I think he did not last too long also. He died, expired, like he went to be with the Lord pretty early. So that's one thing. The second thing is this course forces you, because we have even George out there, to read that you would normally read. So kind of like we are having this fear psychosis. Jyoti, I think, dreams of you, like comes to come. So we end up doing something we probably would not have to find time. So that is the second thing. Third thing is I feel, as I've been a church pastor for many years now, I had to unlearn all through what I have done till now. I had to unlearn all the way because I started with. I told you we were talking about. We used to wake up at 4:30 in the morning, and we used to do something like prayer walk, or you call it prayer march. Pastor Joseph calls it prayer march, and then you have John and all sitting here. we used to go to temples and rebuke the demons and all that. So, and went to Udupi and put a lot of oil all around those temples there. A lot of those priests broke their leg and all that. I think they fell on the oil. So because we saw a lot of priests, limping around. So what really happens is the shift that has been happening for me over the years, where I have been, whatever the Lord shows me is what I've been able to understand. This puts everything into one place, into a single box. It fits it all together, which I don't have an education that way because I've not gone to a theology college or anything like that. So for me, this actually brings you back, takes you away from all those errors that has creeped in. So many people are preaching so many things. You go to YouTube, there are so many people preaching. everything's happening around. So it actually brings you back to those things that I think is very important for the church to really understand what is Christ all about, what is the church all about, who are we at the end of the day. So this is very important. So I'm going to start reviving. I told you that, right? The first principles are going to start reviving in the church. We had actually stopped it after this thing had started. Last year we stopped everything, so we're going to restart all over again.
Thank you.
So that's my conviction. Yeah.
Thank you, Pastor. I want to take something. Of course, all your points are valid. The fact that it takes you back to the early church makes us look at what the apostles did, because there is a tendency for always the church to go off the track. And the only way to come back on track is to keep the view on the early church. Not that the early church was perfect, but the apostles were the ones who were directly working. They did not have the text we have, what we have today as the New Testament in its format as we have it today. They did not have, and they worked with what the apostles taught. And the apostles' teachings are now for us found in the Acts of the Apostles and the writings of the apostles, which is the epistles that we have of all the apostles in the New Testament. So many of us think everything is in the Gospels. That's not true. And you will come to see that a little later, that it is the writings of the apostles that is most critical for the New Testament church. So going back and seeing, not going back, so since we are in the 21st century. Are we in the 21st century? Yes, we are in the 21st century. Since we are in the 21st century, the tendency for all of us, or generally for Christianity today, is to go back to the Reformation, or to go back to the beginning of the Pentecostal movement, or we would go back to the closest that would have been the charismatic movement or the Restoration movement. So what Antioch is putting pressure, what I'm trying to focus on, what Pastor Jiju said. Antioch is trying to get you not to go back to the Restoration movement, not go back to the charismatic movement, not go back to the Azusa Street, not go back to Germany and the Europe with regard to the Reformation movement. And they want you to go back to the apostolic, the early church, which they call, the word is called early church, the early church, and how the apostles worked, how the apostles received the commission, how the apostles went about implementing the commission as led by the Spirit. And so we have a blueprint of how to go about what we are to do as a church. Many a times what happens is, and this is not with any focus on anything that is here in this room, many of times our church goes into programmatic paradigm. We go into to what I would call as infrastructure paradigm. We would go into management paradigm. So when I'm saying all these words, this is what I'm talking about. The management paradigm is, oh, I got 200 people. I need to keep these 200 people somehow staying in my church. There's a lot of attractions and distractions from outside. What will I do? If somebody is doing Kathakali outside, I will do a better Kathakali to see that they don't go outside to see the other Kathakali outside. Or I will, whatever belly dance you have to do, we'll do belly dance as a pastor to somehow see that the people stay here with us. We have to do Zumba, we will do Zumba to see that people stay. So that's called management. And we use programs for it because we are competing with patterns of this world. We are competing with other pastors, and we are competing with, but we are not called to do that. We have got a clear layout in the Acts of the Apostles and the Apostles' writings, very clearly what we have to do as a church. So what they are trying to do, and along with what Pastor Jiju was saying, is that they are trying to make us to go and look at what the early church did and stick to that pattern, because that was the original pattern. Of course, we can play around with it a lot in terms of how we fix it into our culture and our setting, but the core would remain same about how we are going about doing this. So the church can split, go off into the infrastructure paradigm, buildings and building managements and all of those things. So then what happens? The church leaders are meeting about how to manage the buildings, how to work on managing hierarchy and infrastructure and things like that. We are going off what, not that it's not required, but then now as a church or as a New Testament church, we are not be focused on that. Our focus is on growing and influencing communities, spreading through planting communities, so that eventually we will. Pastor Joseph, are you saying something to me? I'm not sorry. Pastor Joseph, you're saying something to. We're not able to hear you, Pastor Joseph.
No, talking to Bindu, actually, she's sitting opposite to me.
Oh, okay. Because you are showing like this, I thought you are so excited about what I was saying. Okay. So anyway, so it is giving us a basis so that we can keep our church in the New Testament model. Originally, how this Jesus, the Spirit of God, led the apostles, and using the same framework to see that we remain in the same framework. But you can see that churches always have a tendency to go off the grid, and the grid, we go off the grid by going into management, and we're going into programs, and we somehow retain the ones that we got. Into that is dangerous, and so they don't want us to go back to Reformation. They're not telling us. They're teaching us. They're telling us this is how Reformation was. This is probably how the Azusa Street was. All of those things will be taught to us. Will give us a picture, but they will always. And there's something that we can learn from all these revival movements. But we need to go back to the early church to get the. So, anybody else would like to share some thoughts on this?
Pastor, I feel what you said is absolutely true, because today, mostly, even many of us, we focus on the infrastructure rather than the gospel movement. And I feel that what you said is absolutely true regarding this. Even when we build our own churches, we concentrate on developing it, adding facilities. The other day, we had to spend some money on the roofing, the old roofing and all gone upstairs. So, during this COVID time, when the finances and all, came down so much, we couldn't but, spend on the roof, because that is something that is, the rains are coming. Kerala, the rains are, devastating. The rains still, quite a heavy rains now. And that was a priority. And a lot of funds we had to divert for, repairing the roof and, changing our roof, entire roof we had to change. And, in those days when we started, it was probably a few lakhs. Today, one small change would cost a bit more. So I feel that, we are more, in order to maintain the structures that we have built, we are spending so much on maintenance, spending so much on sustaining the model that we have done. So many, our track is all, we can't but do it. This is one thing that I found, that, instead of focusing on the work, we are focusing on the infrastructure. Very true.
Okay. Thank you, Pastor. Thank you. Anybody else would like to share fresh thoughts on the Antioch model and what Antioch, the college, is trying to teach us as students of it? Where are they taking us? Yes, Joshua, please. Joshua, we can't hear you. Yeah, okay, I think we got you. No. I think your mic is not connected. No. Your mic is not working. Okay, Joshua, while you sort it out, anybody else would like to share? Jashwant, Pooja, Pastor Sindhyapan. Lemo.
Yeah, it's the purpose that they have. They have studied lots of church planting movements and a lot of evangelistic models they must have observed, and they have come up with this beautiful model, beautiful teachings. So basically, the mandate for the Great Commission is on the church. The focus is on the community together as a community, how we are supposed to establish other local church communities. I mean, that's a thing. So it's a good reading. The reading has been very excellent. The way they have brought out how the gospel started. I mean, how the church began in the first century, and how we have gone into the dark ages, and how everything is being restored progressively. So these articles have been really good, and as we all by now know that all these things have been part of our New Life Fellowship DNA. We have had all these things, but it's giving a very clear shape and structure. That, as mostly all our pastors probably have to be put through this initial teachings, to reinforce the systematic way, the ministry work. So much so, I was just thinking that our pastor's manual should have something, because it's a pastor's manual. I think the copy is supposed to come out, but maybe you should have some condensed version of this. I don't know the rest 3 modules. I'm not sure, but the condensed version. Joseph, you are trying to speak. Your mic is off. No. Okay.
I think today Pastor Bindu is sitting opposite to him, and
Oh.
they are falling in love all over again over Antioch study.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, Pastor, please continue.
I think
Yeah,
what you
see-
say,
Yeah.
what you say is actually true. Very, very correct.
They are agreeing with you, Pastor Siddhipan, so it's okay.
Yeah. So what we need to do probably is, I mean, whether people are going to do MN course or not, we should probably condense these teachings, not for the sake of MN course or CMN course or anything like that. We should condense this course and maybe bring out this teaching in 2 or 3 sessions, for all our pastors. So this will help us to probably evaluate what we have been doing, and how we can they don't need to join the MN course to change the paradigm shift. This can be condensed, and we could teach them. So maybe I'll talk to Pastor Gopi and George and others, to have some kind of a meeting, whereby we can get this focus. There are many beautiful aspects which we already know. Okay, distracted, as Pastor Joseph was saying, and just as George always thinks, we're not counting the souls, we're counting the bricks and all that. So so we can get the people to have a totally different perspective, because we've been distracted. So it may be a good suggestion to give to the trust. This is just, I'm just thinking loudly, that's all. I have not pre-planned to share this. So
Thank you, Pastor. Thank you so much. Anybody else left who would like to share in terms of what they feel after going through the course, what Antioch is trying to do with us?
Adding to what Pastor Siddhipan just said, I think the change about what a church should be today started from the study of the first principle. It really helped us to look at what a family should be, or what a church should be. And so I think we can start off in our churches with the first principle, which will actually help us to understand what a church should be. And as I was writing the competency, I haven't submitted for the first one. I was writing what a church should be today and what it was earlier. So it helps us to really understand, as everyone said, it really gives us an idea of what a church should be. It is not the building, the church, but the universal one church.
Thank you, Pastor Jyoti. That's the idea of what a church should be, the blueprint of what a church originally designed by Jesus, given to the wise master builder Paul, and now today left to us in the records of the scriptures, giving us a clear view. Imagine if the records were not there, then we would not be able to see what the early church was. The records are there, and therefore we are able to see what Paul did. And as we progress in this course, now we are in the very early stages of the basic work of missions and planting and establishing. it becomes even more beautiful as we see how they went about establishing, how they created curriculum in the early church, how the other forces from outside were trying to destroy the church. It's brilliant as we go forward. And I'm happy that all of you are catching the paradigm of what Antioch is trying to do. So let me give you some thoughts. If nobody else is there, I will also share some of my thoughts that probably missed out in the conversations we have till now. Anybody else would like to share their thoughts about what the Antioch is trying to do with our understanding and philosophy? Anybody else?
Like everyone said, one small thing, Pastor. Probably the scriptures gives a single interpretation. So probably they're trying to take us back. Over the decades, a lot of confusions have come in and a lot of distractions have come in. So probably they're trying to take us back to the single interpretation with which the main author has intended to give it to us.
Fantastic. Yes, agreed with you. Yes. Thank you, Jashwant. So I will now take from what Jashwant said. We may be so much focused on the scholars, that is basically the theological readings, which is good. We need to be there. But I think if you see, the Antioch school puts the first preference of in anything that they teach, scriptures. They nicely pull out scriptures for an issue and give it to us. And most of the times we miss out on reading the scriptures. So I would request everyone to read the scriptures. And if you were to see in every issue how they say it, and along what Jashwant was saying, if you open your pages to, let's say, issue 2, we were doing issue 2. It says in issue 2, I'm sorry, unit 2, issue 1, understanding the Great Commission. We have already done this, but look at the first thing. They give you biblical passages and read the first paragraph. When reading the passages, take note to do 2 very important tasks. 1, read the passage with the intent of determining the author's intended meaning. Study the passage as it relates to the issues and questions proposed. So they're not just asking you to read the scriptures, but read the scriptures to understand what the author originally intended and read it in relation to the issues and the questions proposed. So there is a great stress, in fact, primary stress for all of us to read those scriptures that are given. Now for issue 1, unit 2, issue 1, understanding the Great Commission, he has given Matthew 16, 13 to 20, Acts 2, 42 to 47, Matthew 28, 16 to 20, Acts 1, 6 to 11, Acts 13, 1 to 14, 28, Acts 20, 17 to 38. All of these are related scriptures. And if you were to spend time reading it, maybe not just reading these passages, reading around these passages, just reading the passages would give you a powerful impression of what Jeff is trying to get us to. And it's good to get it from the horse's mouth. It's good to get it from the original records. So we need always to read the scriptures first, get our paradigm shifted based on the scriptures, then supported by what the scholars are speaking, which Jeff has compiled. Not just Jeff, if you look at the back of your book, if you look at the book, the names are designed and compiled by Jeff Reed in cooperation with Walter Kaiser. He's a very senior scholar in theology, okay, very, very senior scholar. He is the president emeritus of Gordon Conwell Theological Seminary. He's a distinguished professor of Old Testament, Walter Kaiser. Ted Ward, the other person in this thing, they're Professor Emeritus International Studies and Educational Research, Michigan State University. So the people who have actually compiled this, Jeff, who is a planter, Jeff, who is a churchman, along with excellent scholars. Steve Kemp, who is the dean of the school, is actually ex-Fuller's principal, okay, dean of Fuller's or Moody's or something like that, I'm not sure. So we have also the best of scholarship coming to us. One of our pastors who was doing this course and left the course right now because of other reasons, he said one thing to me, George, his view when I asked this question was, he said, George, this is the only course that is bringing scholarly material into the church. Otherwise, the scholarly material remains where?
The library.
In the library of the seminary. But today, the church is accessing some of the best content in a very concise capsule form so that we can get scholarship. So please note, when you are studying, the scriptures is primary. They want you to have paradigm shift from the scripture itself. It is supported by scholarly work, which they have read. Jeff has read hundreds and thousands of books and pulled out what is relevant, so that we don't have to read hundreds and thousands of books, and just giving us the crux of the matter, so that what we are understanding from the scriptures is supported by authors. Now, all authors that they are giving or giving us to read is not expected to show you what is the correct way. It is also showing you what is not correct. So many times we read the text or the scholars and we think, okay, now Jeff is trying to tell us that we can do it like this. No, that's not what Jeff is doing. Jeff has given you in the collection of scriptures what is expected. Jeff has given you in the way he has framed the Socratic questions. He's given you what the paradigm that he wants you to see. But he is giving you scholarly work to show both the positive and the negative, so that we kind of see where the church should not go and where the church should go. So those things that the other thing that the course does with you is it deals with you personally. For example, when you do your life and map, it does a review of your status in your spiritual walk. It kind of does a review of who you are, what you are meant to be, all of those things. It's beautiful in the way it helps you to look at yourself. That's, I think, very key for us in terms of where we are going. For example, you do your identifying who you are meant to be. In your second year, you will be doing becoming who you are meant to be. So it's a progression of figuring out what you are hardwired to and how your hardwiring can go about what God has designed you in contributing to the church. Lifen is basically looking at your past, then figuring out what you want to do in the future, how you would like to manage your assets. I mean, these are amazing thoughts, so that we are not left scattered here and there. They give you a clear track to go with, and they leave it to us. I mean, they're not taking away our uniqueness and things, that they're giving it. They're building a framework for us to look at our life and then think about planning it into the future. And so Lifen, as you do it in the first year, in your second year, you need to update it. Third year, you need to update it. So as you're learning, you are recording your transformation. You're recording your journey, which is brilliant. I think it's a fantastic tool to the main core curriculum. The whole idea of looking at our lives, the whole idea of figuring out where we are, the whole idea of how we have gone off the track and how we need to come back. Some of you, when you're writing your life and map and all, I'm excited because you have said very clearly, I'm not happy where I am and I need to rework. That's a good thing. That's what they want you to do. They want you, as you're doing your core curriculum, they're expecting to see change in you, and they're capturing that change. They're capturing what you are and where you're going, or who you were and who you are going to become. That's a brilliant way to look at it. So Jeff has come up with excellent tools for us to work on those things. And the other thing that Jeff is trying to do is that give credit to the ministry that we are already doing. Okay, he's giving credit to the ministry that we're all doing, because he knows that most of the people who are doing this course have a passion for Jesus and want to be involved in the church or is involved in the church. So he is giving us an opportunity to validate our ministry. Maybe we are doing ministry just ad hoc without any planning. Now with the ministry practicum, you look at your ministry, you're able to kind of look at it, otherwise which you are not looking retrospectively. Now it gives you an idea of how we can do better. So, and therefore in that process also giving you credit. So which is good, the way we can look at our ministry. So it's like a very comprehensive, it's like, you say a comprehensive full body checkup. That's exactly what this course will do. It's a complete ministry overhauling, complete ministry look, which includes you and eventually your family, your church, everything. It will make you relook at what we are doing, comparing it with the early church, comparing with what all happened in the history of the church. Some of the things that we are going to read is so difficult, so very difficult. And by the way, as you read through, the most important thing that we will always see is local church, universal church, and more importantly, the position and the value of the local church. They don't go outside that framework. So it is bringing back the focus onto the local church. So, and how key the local church is, and how the local church should be related to what has happened in the early church. So imagine that all of our local churches go back to the original paradigm and start to experience the original paradigm. I think we would be having a fantastic journey. Fantastic journey. So those are the areas which it is basically deals with you, it develops you, and establishes you in the way of Christ and the apostles. In the way of Christ and the apostles. Now, they use this word paradigm change. They use the word in the way of Christ and the apostles. They use the local church terminology very, very thing. So it is important for us, all of us who are doing this course, to know where Antioch is leading us. Antioch is not coming by our side to pat on our back and say, excellent job, boy, excellent. No, they are very much interested in helping you change your paradigm. If you are not in the paradigm, okay? Some of us may be already having the paradigm. We know, like Pastor Santhiappan said, a good amount of what. So I'm always saying like this. I know that one point now, we never thought Pastor Sam will go away. I mean, I never in my wildest dream thought Pastor Sam will go away. I almost enjoyed an everyday fellowship with him. But when he left, my biggest source of inspiration, my biggest source of impartation suddenly went off. So when our first generation of leaders either retire or pass on, how will the new church, the new leaders, carry the same original paradigm? It's a very, very, a very, 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 very important thing, because Apostle Paul thought about it when he was writing First Timothy, Second Timothy, in perhaps the last letters that he wrote. He said, Timothy, guard the deposit, guard the deposit. He kept on saying, the patterns I've shown you, my suffering and my teaching, everything. So there was such a pressure on Paul to have made Xerox copies of himself for the next generation, so that the next generation will have the original paradigm. So in the same way, now when the first generation of leaders of the New Life Fellowship pass away or retire, what is the guarantee that our next generation will carry the same paradigm? Because our next generation of pastors and leaders may be so focused on how the other bigger churches are doing, what they are doing in the West, and we are trying to replicate and trying to focus on what others are doing best to see numbers coming, whereas we would have missed the original paradigm. So what this course will do is keep our local churches on track, keep our networks on track to the original paradigm, which I think a great extent our New Life leaders, original pioneering leaders had. They saw it without any course actually, because they saw the scriptures and they carried that paradigm and they transferred it or attempted to transfer it to the next generation. But here is a foolproof system wherein which that paradigm can be transferred by just putting people into these programs, studying, they're reading and studying. And by the way, I have posted some videos for you from Antioch on the chat. Those videos are very helpful when you write your competencies. So they are just simple principles that they teach each video session. By the way, on 11th, 8 p.m., there is a session. Please, all of these live Antioch sessions, please don't miss them. They will spur you, strengthen you to go forward. Okay. Then there is a whole huge digital asset of the 2020 Build conference videos. And you can take them and watch them, and they will, instead of watching other YouTube videos or other preachers and teachers and all, watch the conference videos. It will help you write your competencies. They speak a lot about what you need to write, how you need to build your competencies. So, when you get your free time, when you're going in your car or when you're, sitting somewhere, watch these videos. It will help you to do your course. It will help you to establish your way of writing the competencies and things like that. Now, if you have noticed, they're not bothered about your spelling mistakes. They're not bothered about your grammar. They're not bothered about how much you will write it in an typical academic writing. They're not bothered about it. What they're looking for is, have you interacted with the scriptures? Have you interacted with the authors? Have you had a Socratic discussion where you discuss the scriptures and the authors and formed your own original thoughts? How much are they in alignment with the original paradigm? Where do you disagree? Where you agree with the authors? And why you don't agree or why you agree is what the paper should contain. Once you establish that, then you are writing a ministry reflection on what you have learned and how you have will apply it to your ministry, or how you have not applied it in your ministry before. So the past and the present is important. So are you able to see how the competency, how are they expecting you? So when you write your competency, they are seeing whether you have started aligning to the original paradigm. Some of us are writing still, how much you are convinced by your current paradigm. That's not what they're looking. In fact, Bill writes to me sometimes when I have cleared you, it goes to Bill. Bill evaluates and says, George, you just gave green ticks to people who have the original paradigm. I mean, they have their new, the corrupt paradigm still, and they're still holding on to it. They're just justifying it using the authors that they have read, and you're giving them green ticks. So it is not just how good you write your paper. They are also looking at how much your paradigm has changed. Your papers should reflect how much the paradigm has changed back to the early church. And let me explain this also. When you go through the paradigm change, it will put pressure on you. Why? Because what you have held on for all these years as the Holy Grail suddenly gets taken and torn and thrown out. It's very painful. And if you are experiencing that pain, please go through that pain, because that pain is very, very important for us. One sister who is part of New Life Fellowship Mumbai and part of my leadership team in the network here in Bangalore, and she was part of UESI. Okay, so UESI is a parachurch ministry. And when your fourth paper comes in, your fourth competency, that is the fourth unit, it's a lot of work. The fourth and fifth unit talk a lot about parachurch and how we need to look as to the parachurch movement, and how it is how a parachurch would fit into the original paradigm. Well, the fact is that it doesn't fit, because the original paradigm did not have parachurch movements. Okay, so when this sister wrote the competency for unit 4, competency 4 paper, she wrote a fantastic paper. In terms of the quality of the paper, was brilliant. She has interacted with the authors. She has reflected very well on the this thing. Only thing is, in her entire paper, she has supported the parachurch movement. And so I gave green ticks because of the quality of the material, but I was not happy that she had not had the paradigm change. I sent it to Bill. Bill looked at it, wrote a nice mail back to me and said, George, what are you doing? You just gave green ticks to a completely rotten paradigm. And he sent the paper back to me and said, that's not going to work. You are not just evaluating the quality of the paper or how well the person has interacted with it. You have to see that the paper is evaluated for the paradigm change that happened. That means to say how much the person has gone back to the original paradigm, how much the person has gone back to the early church paradigm. The early church paradigm does not have a parachurch movement. And therefore, when she supports all the scriptures and all the authors that she read to support parachurch movement, she has just slipped off the mark. And ultimately, the course has no impact on her. Then I had to call that sister and sit with her and explain to, of course, in my reflection back to her of the paper, I told these things. She wrote again and sent back to me. She removed some things, but still the parachurch is because you know why? She was very deeply influenced by UESI. And she's finding it very difficult to say that UESI is not the original plan of God, which I understand. That's a paradigm pressure. That is, it gives you butterflies in your stomach. It's like, you ate something and it's not digesting. This is a real struggle. When you're going through that experience, which I went through over the last 4 years, I had to break a lot of my myths that I believed, or corrupt paradigms that I held because of the influence of what the world was talking about the church, my own journey with my identity and how the performance of my church was connected to my identity and a lot of those issues. And when I went through those paradigm changes, it was heartbreaking to me. I could have sleepless nights. I had very difficult, but that's paradigm change. So paradigm change is not just giving you a goosebump feeling and making you feel good. No, paradigm change will break your heart. Paradigm change will give butterflies in your stomach. Paradigm change will give you sleepless nights. But ultimately, it wants to get you to the truth. So why do I feel butterflies in my stomach? Why do I have heartbreaks? Why do I have sleepless nights? Because whatever I was holding on to, I have to let go because now I've seen the truth. What I thought that was the truth is no more the truth. The truth is something else. Now I find it in the records of the scriptures because the Spirit of God has put it there. The chief architect, Jesus Christ, gave the blueprint to Paul, who was the wise master builder, who established the churches and planted the churches, so that it gives me a record today how I need to do it. So what have I done? I have taken up from what has happened in the post-Reformation, the vestigials and all of the things that has happened by consequence of what the church could not do and ended up in other organizations and mission agencies and parachurches and all of those things. And today I'm moving in those paradigms when I can go back to the original paradigm. So are you able to get, so paradigm change is not just goosebumps and things. Paradigm change is heartbreaking. Paradigm change is painful. Paradigm change will, but once you go through the pain, go through the heartbreak, come to the truth, you are so established because you paid a price for getting back to the old paradigm, the original paradigm, the original idea that Apostle Paul and the other apostles gave to us in the records of the scriptures. Now, why do we take it to the scriptures? Because that's the authority. That's the authority. But we, of course, have to bring it to our culture and our settings and everything. That is hermeneutics, and again, they help you with that. And that's amazing, and because that's what Jeff is trying to do. As we suppose we were to read the scriptures, read the scholars, and write a paper on our own, we would not experience paradigm change. We will experience paradigm change when we have read the scriptures ourselves. Personally, we have read the scholars ourselves, and we come to a forum like this, which is the Church of Jesus Christ, and we share our thoughts. Then we pull each other. We pull each other to help each other to come to the paradigm. Without the community learning, there will be no paradigm change. So the most critical area is that we come together and learn together. We share our thoughts, but of course we have ethics on how we share. When we disagree with someone, so imagine I'm talking, Pastor Juju just shared something. That was what he held, and maybe it was the wrong paradigm. We know that what he's still saying is in the old paradigm. Now I got this brilliant idea that he's wrong. And I got this revelation, and I know it's a real paradigm or the original paradigm. I then opened the mic and then bash Pastor Juju's paradigm. But that's not what we are expected to do. We speak with courteously, we speak the truth in love, we carefully present this thing. Now it will clash. The two paradigms are going to crash and beat into each other. But eventually what will happen through those processes is that we all start to shift our paradigms. Because when I have spoken in truth, the truth in love, and shared what I have understood, and then Pastor Juju is going through that paradigm change. Probably he'll have sleepless nights. Maybe he will have a call with me as a fellow brother who shared my view. And we have a personal discussion on that issue. And, probably I would change in some area and Pastor Juju would say some area, but what are we changing to? We would eventually change to the apostolic paradigm or the first century paradigm. Are you able to get what I'm trying to say? I spoke a lot today, but I'm just trying to help you because I've watched your competencies. I have read through your competencies and I can see where we are going. And what I'm sharing and what most of you have shared kind of helps us to figure out how we need to do this course, where we are going in this course. Any thoughts and comments on anything that I said or any doubts that I'm trying to share? By the way, we have somehow developed this concept that I'm the teacher in this network or in this group. It's not true. Okay, I'm not the teacher. If you, for your information, I will tell you why I'm not the teacher. So 1 second, hold on. Okay. Do you see George Cherian in the list? Master of Ministry, Doctor of Ministry. Bill Burns is my guide, and I am an active student of this institute. Are you able to see that? Were you all able to see? So I am a fellow student. Only thing is, I may have gone the journey a little bit. I crashed into so many walls, made a lot of mess with my life in this course. I'm able to share all the mess I made. That's all. Other than that, I'm a fellow student.
Dr. George, I think you should show the screen again, because otherwise everywhere it's your name, no? George Charan, George Charan, George Charan, George Charan. So you're the teacher.
No. Can you see it again?
Pastor, you are not only the teacher.
So your name is there everywhere. So how can you say you're not the teacher?
No. I am only a evaluator. This certified leader is basically, I'm just evaluating you, that they have trained me. They're teaching me actually on, which I'm not even competent to do that. But can you see, I'm a teacher. I'm a student here. Can you see this title student here? And if you go down, I'm a student. Okay. So I'm not the teacher. I'm only someone who traveled a little farther so that I know where
You're multifaceted, Dr. George.
Yeah,
Student
thank
and leader.
Thank you.
Pastor, you are not teacher, Pastor. You are not teacher. You are more than the teacher.
Yeah. Thank you.
But what is the meaning of faculty?
Associate
Your
faculty.
name was written, it was associate faculty, it is written there.
Yeah. So
What is
the
the meaning
associate,
of that?
in Antioch, associate faculty is somebody who will review your work and give you feedback. And they are giving that role to me, or teaching me to do that role right now, because I have gone through what you have gone through, and I have made my mistakes, and I have learned, and therefore I can tell where you will go wrong. That's basically what I'm saying. But what is actually the teacher in this is, I'll tell you where the teaching in the Antioch model, who the teacher is. The Antioch model, the first teacher is the scriptures. And of course, the Spirit of God that they so much invoke when we study the scriptures. Second is the scholars. We are learning from the scholars who have done what they call as the 2000 years of archives of Christian history, and scholars who have written material, which is really helpful. The 2000 years of wisdom is our second this thing. The third teachers is the cohort discussion. Each of us play a critical role in contributing to the learning of each of us. I have done through this course with myself when I was learning, with the senior cohort that is already running, and now with you all. You won't believe it. I have learned as much from my cohort learning and the senior cohort that I have led, and this cohort, I'm learning more here. So the journey of my learning has not stopped. I'm still learning with you and understanding many paradigms which I may not have seen earlier in my earlier two cohorts. You have returned the competencies I still haven't seen. I've gone back and corrected my competencies as we did. So the idea is, our teacher is the scriptures and the Holy Spirit, the scholars, the wisdom of the last 2000 years, and then our Socratic discussion where we are learning together. And Jeff has facilitated it by giving us wonderful questions to think about together. So are you able to get who the teachers and how the teaching actually works? Was our discussion useful today in terms of kind of understanding where we are going?
Yes. Pastor, you are not the teacher, agreed. You are our evaluator.
That is there. Yes. But even if I evaluate you, I have to send it to Bill, who will say whether my evaluation is right or not. I'm an associate faculty trainee at this point. Brother Najib, this session was specifically planned also for you to kind of get your understanding of the course. Are you able to kind of figure out, you have any questions?
No, thank you so much, Pastor. I got an idea as to what is the expectation, and how deeper we have to dwell in it, how serious it is. It is not, just one course that you're doing. It is, I think, for me, actually, I got inspired by what I started to do with Suma, and I saw that it made sense to challenge my own paradigm from where I came. And I always believed that the number of denominations which are there in the Christendom is so huge that I always wondered why it is so when there is only one teaching of Christ. So from that point of view, I wanted to join this course and see if it crashes some of those paradigms. But there's a lot of reading and understanding. Those readings need to be deliberated and brainstormed to understand from where they come. The contexts are different because their context is a bit different. I see some of that writings, that their context is completely different from the Indian context. So applying it to us is going to be something that I will come back to you, this group, for discussion as to how
you nailed it again, Brother Najib, in that how do we now, David Niranjay or David Hasselgrave or, Michael Griffiths or George W. Peters is not from our paradigm, okay, from our context. But the scriptures are meant for it, all these things. The scholars have written it in their context. They have brought out principles. How in our Socratic discussion is where we sit as a church and think it in our cultural context, think it in our time context.
Right.
So
in
in
the book of Acts also, when Paul was making his journey, my question to Suma was, did he have a plan before he went to those places, understood the context, understood the culture, the people, what works, what doesn't work? And sometimes, I slip into, because I come from the corporate world, then I feel guilty. No, maybe I'm not thinking the right way. I'm thinking the corporate way. So, there's always this battle in the mind between what is the biblical and spiritual way of thinking and what is the worldly way of thinking. But I saw that even Christ had a plan. Even when he did, he had a plan. So there was always a context, a plan, a way of teaching, a way of addressing. So we'll have to understand that and look at that from Indian context. So when I do something in Tamil Nadu versus Karnataka versus in Mumbai, there are completely different contextual. We have gone to so many churches. We have gone to a Marathi church, we've gone to a North Indian church, a Malayali church, a Kannadiga church. So we have seen the context is, cultural context plays a big role in the way teaching has been done and understanding. So I have come to this course clearly to understand it, but also when you look at the articles which they are writing, some of those articles need to be contextualized to what we want to do in our,
Yes.
in India.
Yes. So for those who do not know Brother Najib's background, let me just do basic introduction. Brother Najib, would you be able to give us a little bit more your background so that the community will know? Pastor Jiju may know to some extent, but I think the whole community would be blessed to know because most of us know our backgrounds. Most of us are pastors. Okay. Some of us are pastors from corporate worlds, like probably myself and Pastor Jiju and all of, we have some connection with some of them are pure corporate people and just, leadership in church or part of the leadership in church. So we all kind of know our context, but it would be good for all of us in the community to know your context. And so therefore we will know when you speak from what context you're coming.
Yeah, sure. So just to introduce myself. So my name is Najib. My surname is Khan. I'm from a Muslim background. My baptismal name is Benjamin. They used to call me Binju even before I became a Christian. That was my pet name. And I'm Suma's husband. And since I was baptized in 1996, but I came through the Marthoma Church, the mainline church. My grooming happened in the mainline church or Marthoma Church, where the youth groomed me. This is where I gave my life to Christ. But because of language, this is again another context. Because of language, I then moved to Methodist Church and other churches where it became very easy for me to understand the word and also to contribute. I've also been a part of a family ministry called Urban India Ministry, where Brother PC, Matthew and Sibi, they run that. And I was one of the trustees during that time, early 98, 99. And since then, I have moved quite a lot because I am in the telecom industry for the last 30 years. Worked in L&T and some other companies, in Airtel also. 14 years in Airtel. And since mine was a transferable job, I moved around many places in the country. And that's how we got to go to many churches which were not mainline churches. So I came in from a mainline church, but went to many other, churches which were of different denomination and different language. And from that perspective, I find this a very, very interesting topic, especially the Book of Acts, because the real mission is happening there. I mean, the example and the evidences are given there very, very clearly. So that's my background. So I'm right now working in the Maldives. My wife is in Bangalore. Two of my children are with me here because, and one daughter is with Suma there. And we're hoping and praying that we probably my next year some other transfer will happen and we'll be staying together. In terms of my other background, I mean, my family had disconnected from me. So basically I have no connection with my family except my sister because they gave me up, and that kind of continues. But slowly restoration is happening. It has happened over 20 years of more than 20 years of my becoming a Christian. So I'm sorry that I'm amongst the pastors and I'm just a lay person coming in to learn from all of you because you all are at a different level altogether. I'm hoping I can contribute to the discussion.
Absolutely. We would love your paradigm because you work at a corporate level. And the corporate has a lot of things that, today the corporate is using a lot of the principles of the scriptures.
Correct.
And you can, for us pastors, I always say, we are surrounded by believers, but a person who is in the marketplace is surrounded by unbelievers. So application of many of these things would be so perfect in the corporate context where we are able to be the salt and light and, the city upon a hill, the light upon a lampstand. So yeah, so we need those contexts. And many of us, like Joshua is in the marketplace and Jashwant is in the marketplace. Lemu is also in the marketplace as he's also working in so many of us are from the marketplace, and so I know well in the church scenario. Some of us are purely in the marketplace. So all of these different contexts will definitely help us to when we do our Socratic discussion, when we think together, it will help us to form excellent views and ideas and suggestions.
Yeah, I really thank you for bringing me in, Pastor.
Yeah, sure. All right. So can we today, now that we got about 30 minutes left to finish our program today, our session today, I'd like to talk about the Unit 2 competency. Okay. So if you can give me the competency question, someone can read the competency question to me. Competency question. Let me just look at it. Okay. Anybody can read it to me, please.
Develop a conviction of mission. Develop the conviction, the role of local church in mission.
Okay. Thank you, Jashwant. Thank you so much, sister, for putting that up. Develop conviction on the role of the local church in missions. Many times in missions today, develop the convictions on the role of the local church in missions today. We need to read this question several times because this is not a typical question like how in the Indian education system is. You mug something and come, and then you have the last 10 years question papers, the same question is put, and therefore we can vomit out the answer what we mugged and came because we have studied the last 10 years question paper. So they don't want us to work in that way of learning. And our biggest challenge in writing competencies is coming out of that paradigm. Okay. They are asking us, it's not a question actually. The question, though we are reading it as a question, the idea is they are asking us, present your competency. That means to say, have you become competent in the area of the idea that local church is at the center of missions today, or the local church is to drive missions today. Now, this competency has different aspects. One is you are going to prove to the evaluator that you have developed this competency. So when you write your paper, you are presenting your competency to the evaluator. So the evaluator is looking at from a competency perspective. That means, and the competency expectation is very clearly put there. Okay. So let me go back to the document. So if I were to go to the dashboard, don't look at my dashboard. Your dashboard will look totally different. And if you go to acts, and if you see in the acts, the second this thing is develop convictions on the role of the local church in missions today. We need to read it again and again so that we get the competency question very clearly, so that we know what competency to display. So what is Antioch asking us? Antioch is asking, have you developed a conviction that the local church is the heart of missions, is the driver of missions, is the planner of missions, is the strategizer of the missions today, for today? How do we do that? We have to look at what the apostles did. So that's in the original paradigm. Then what has happened over the 2000 years in the scholars paradigm. And then together we are in our discussion of our Socratic discussion, we have developed that in our culture, and we are presenting that to the evaluator. We are presenting that to the evaluator. Are you able to get the competency question and how to look at the competency question? And let me tell you, the competency question is aligned to the unit 2, to the unit 2 question. So let me put that up for you 1 minute so that you understand again how that works. Okay, I'm sharing my screen again so that you can see what I'm looking at. So this document has already been shared with you, and we are in page number 15 of this document. Unit 1, progressive role of unit 1. So they have told what competency to develop in course objectives. Then they have given that how each unit will form what you are to, you form your thinking, what is expected, the goal. So unit 1, keys from Acts, what it was supposed to develop. Unit 2, the role of the local church fulfilling the Great Commission. Building on the data of Acts study, this unit addresses, everybody is able to see this? Everybody is able to see
Yes,
what I'm...
yes, yes.
Okay, do you want me to increase it a little bit in size? So
Yeah.
is that too much? Is that better?
Yes. Yeah.
So how, what is this course unit 2 is doing? The most important thing is in the title, the role of local church in fulfilling the Great Commission. How do we come to that conclusion? We are building on the data of Acts study. This unit addresses the issue of the centrality of the local church in God's plan for this age. In our generation, the Great Commission is often reduced to an individualistic enterprise, the multiplication of individuals or the multiplication of disciples. The question is asked, how did the Great Commission unfold? The unit attempts to demonstrate that the focus in the first century was not the multiplication of individuals or disciples, but the multiplication of believing communities, local churches, and that the local church was central to the unfolding of this plan. Wow. Can you see the picture what they're trying to create? Can you see the paradigm that they're creating through that units 2 study? Now, when you come down from that and look at the, see now unit 1. So unit 1 has issue 1 and it has issue 2, which we have already finished. Okay. Now we are going to unit 2, the role of the local church in fulfilling the Great Commission. Okay. That is the key part of what you need to understand through this unit. It has unit 1, issue 1. The issue 1 is understanding the Great Commission. So they have given us scripture passages, which we are supposed to discuss. We are supposed to discuss read the articles. And here we are doing the presentation of the articles in class. And then we are to sit and ask these questions and come to certain conclusions, which is going to help it study in the context of our culture, in our situations. Okay. And issue 2 is the role of church in fulfilling the Great Commission. Again, passages, text, theological readings or the scholars, again, a discussion. So when we have finished this much, you would be competent to write the competency, present your understanding to the evaluator. Okay, present your understanding to the evaluator, and that presentation is basically your conviction that the local church is central in the original plan of fulfilling the Great Commission and how that is happening today. Now, what happened? What happened in this whole issue? Today, we don't have the original paradigm. Today, the Great Commission is being fulfilled by other agencies also, apart from the church. We have parachurch organizations, mission agencies, sending agencies who are doing the work. And they are maybe building hospitals and doing other social work in the process of preaching the gospel. But the original paradigm didn't have that. So what they're trying to do is change your paradigm to see what the original church did, and that your paradigm should now align with what the apostles told and how that paradigm can be exercised today in our context. So then the other thing that we need to do is, I will just pick up one more thing to help you. Okay, I'm showing you another document. By the way, the previous document I showed you, all of you have it, right? And that is your mother document. It's like your mother deed for the ACTS course. You got to see those things every now and then. Before you write your competency, read the goal of the unit, and then go through what the each unit, what was the questions. So there's an upside down approach video that is fantastic by Caleb. I think he did it. I will post that video also of how to write the competency or approach the competency. Now I'm showing you something else. Now, when you write your competency, who is the first evaluator? Yes, anybody willing to share with me? Who is the first evaluator?
We.
We also.
Exactly. Can you believe that there is a college which says that we are the first evaluator? So now they are, in order to keep the evaluation objective, okay, objective. Look at this. So I'm going to take you through the student's manual. It's very interesting if you read this. How we are evaluated. So life and ministry development, just basically MAP and SEMA, and how it is going to be evaluated is shown there. General education integrated core, how that is going to be evaluated. Now for us, it is going to be, and some of these things are not in our this thing, okay? That is all happening in their BTH program or BMIN program, which we are not doing it here in India because it has so many things like community service and all, which we can't do in our context. Now leadership course series, okay? Bachelor's level must meet the first 4 criteria plus 1 additional criteria. Master's level must meet the first 6 criteria plus 1 additional criteria. And we are all doing, where some of us are in CMIN and things like that, but we will all do at the master's level. Our criteria must be. So what is the first and most important thing? Now that we know the goal of the unit, we have now developed from reading the scriptures, going through the scholars, doing the Socratic discussion, we have developed our competency skills, and we have developed those convictions, and we have put that, and the vapor has come on paper. What is really developed in your mind has now fallen on paper. You need to evaluate that paper. So how are you going to evaluate? So first you need to evaluate that is the paper having clarity. Now, I have read some papers. It is all over the place. There is no clarity on this thing. The writing is jumbled. There is no proper headings, no proper titles and things like that. So let's see what clarity is. Is it crisp and readable? can it be readily seen that a particular competency is being addressed rather than others? Now, I've read a lot of papers where you are writing something that is not addressing the competency at all. Is it easy to see strengths and weaknesses related to the other criteria? Does it have use subheadings, bolding, and underlining? The last part, we're good. Indians are very good at it, but I see that we are failing miserably there. It should have good, nice headings and nice subheadings and a good flow in the way the headings and this thing is done. So that makes it giving clarity. So let me repeat clarity again. Is it crisp? Is it readable? Can it be readily seen that particular competency? When I look at your competency and I go through the headings, I should be able to figure out that you are addressing the competency. And the headings and subheadings also should follow a good logic. Okay. Second is complete. It should. Are you all able to hear me? Are you all with me in the? All right. Thank you. Thank you. The second part is it complete? Does it address all parts of the competency? Now, most of us don't read the competency question. We just make one glance over it. And then we are trying to write what we learned in our discussions and we read in our articles. No, that's not the question. The articles and the discussions and the scriptures are there as only helping us form this thing. But the completeness is determined by whether you have finished all parts of the competency. Now, in this unit 2, the question is, have you developed convictions that the local church let me just, what was the question? Can you just give me the question again? I think it's there in our, this thing. 1 second, hold on. Develop convictions on the role of the local church in missions today. So so what I need to do, I need to have an idea about what the local church is, from the scriptures and from the author's perspective, the scholar's perspective. And I need to have an idea of missions from the scripture perspective, the original paradigm, Paul, apostolic preaching, and the scholar's paradigm, how they looked at the missions, what missions is not, what local church is not, the role of other organizations other than churches that have come up and how they are doing missions, but how the original paradigm should be. So am I having developed convictions that the local church, the role of the local church in missions today? So it should meet. Now it has the missions today should have the paradigm. It's only complete if I address the issues today in my competency. That means the church is there, but there are other agencies that have come up. That's the situation today. But I'm comparing that with the original Pauline or the original apostolic paradigm, where there was such an issue was not there. How can I come back to the original paradigm? Accurate. Is it on target? Does it demonstrate an accurate understanding of the development of the thought in the course? See, this is the part. Now, does it demonstrate an accurate understanding of the development of thought in the course? It is not about what you think. It is what Antioch is leading you to think. How it is crashing into your reality, crashing into your paradigm, and how your paradigm will have to be destroyed to build what Antioch is leading, which is the paradigm of the apostles, Christ and his apostles. So are you able to see the accurate will come only when you have undergone the paradigm change and how you present that paradigm change? The fourth one is supported. Are the ideas supported logically? Now, sometimes I've read some articles where there is content, but there is no logical flow. Absolutely no logical flow. You have just cut-pasted it from the articles, different ideas that you liked. And you have built a paper of unrelated ideas. The headings don't connect. The content don't connect. But standalone, the heading and the content, the sub-content would have some relationship. But one block to the other block doesn't have any this thing. There is no logical development. Is the evidence given to support the claims that are made? Now, suppose you have made a claim, you have made a statement from the understanding of the paradigm change that you went through. Are you able to support it with scriptures? Are you able to support it from something the scholars have spoken? Okay, that can be negative or positive. Has a case or an argument being built? Have explanations been given? For instance, is biblical teaching used as a point of reference for examining the ministry structures and practices in one's own tradition, not merely using verses to provide proof text and support for one's tradition? Don't use just verses. You need to give blocks of text, scriptural thing, to give a basis on what you are trying to say. Okay. Now, the most important part, which most of us struggle with, is resource interaction. Okay. Does it include an interaction with the articles of the course and or other relevant sources? Now, you don't need to restrict to just your articles that are given in the book. I refer to a lot of other material. Now, you don't need to do that. Please don't think that, okay, now I told that you should refer to extra material. No, please don't do that if you don't have time. At least read the articles that is given to you, and you need to present the support of these articles in your writing. Does it show engagement of thought, not mere questions, not citations or biblical reference, bibliographic references? For instance, does it show where ideas came from, comparison of ideas from various authors, and opinions about the contribution of some articles? So this is how resource interaction comes. So does it include interaction with the articles of the course? So when you are writing your idea, you are saying that, hey, this is what this author said, and I agree with it because this. But that author is saying that it's like this, and it's contradicting with this author, and I stand with the first author because of these things. And I see it today in my context this way, in the understanding. So you have interacted with the resources, you have argued with the resources, you have compared the ideas, and you have given your opinions about the contribution of the articles. That's what a resource interaction is. So what some of us are doing is you cut pasted it from the text and told George W. Peters have said this statement. There's no need of that. I mean, that doesn't do any good. Instead of cut pasting the text, you can write George W. Peters in his article, so and so, and you write it in your own words, what you understood George W. Peters said, what you agreed with it, what you disagreed with it, and why you disagreed with it, or why you agreed with it. And then you write George Peters said like this, but Kenneth Mulholland said like this. And, I am not agreeing with Kenneth Mulholland because this is the reason why I don't agree with it, but I prefer to go with what George W. Peters says because of this reasons. Are you able to get what a resource interaction is now? Okay. Any questions till now? Or we'll take questions after this, okay? Then the most important part of the first 6 points, which is mandatory for us, is ministry reflection. Does it show reflection on substantial ministry experience in the past or present, or plans for implementation in actual ministry setting? Are you and your situation explicit, as almost no one else should be able to write the same paper? Your ministry reflection would make your paper unique. Every other possibility is that you may overlap with somebody else's thought. Okay, you read the same scriptures, you read the same articles, you sat in a room together and discussed. So there is a good possibility that a lot of similarity can be there and there. But your ministry reflection would completely make your paper unique. But here is where now we make mistake in our ministry reflection. We write a fantastic first part. You really interacted with the author. You came up with fantastic. You went through paradigm change. But in your ministry reflection, you will go back to your original paradigm and explain everything in your original paradigm. What you did in your past, what you did in your ministry. Now, that's not what they're saying. They want you to write how what you learned has affected you in your thinking with regard to your idea of your ministry in the past. Now, for example, I was a parachurch worker, or I was so much involved in parachurch ministry. Now, I have understood the church is the original holder of the Great Commission and the implementer of the Great Commission. And therefore, today I am saying that as much as I believe that parachurch organizations had a part to play, and yes, I agree with you, but I'm convinced that the church is, and therefore, in my rest of my journey, I'm going to be part of a good church, an apostolic church. When I say an apostolic church, they functioned in the apostolic times, how they worked, and the way they worked in the Acts, and I want to be part of it, and I'm going to get involved in the Great Commission implementation as I see in the original paradigm. Okay, so my ministry reflection has to be related to what I wrote, not independent of what I wrote. Now, for example, in the keys of establishing an expansion of the church, I have written now, imagine keys of the role of the Holy Spirit, the role of the scriptures, the role of commitment in the apostles, and the role of prayer in the apostles. So these are the 4 keys I wrote. In my ministry reflection, I have told about how I planted church. And I've written down a very nice story of how I planted my church. I will not meet the criteria because I need to tell how prayer, how commitment, how Holy Spirit and scripture, which the keys I mentioned, I used in the past or did not use in the past. And how I am going to apply these keys in my future planting of churches. So they're not saying that we should have used it. No, they're not saying. You can tell that how you did not use in the past. That's no problem in that. But I'm going to use it in my future. Are you able to see how ministry reflection is supposed to be? Ministry reflection should be based on what you have already written in the body of your paper, in your paradigm change, in your convictions that you have developed. And now, how is it reflecting on your ministry? Past, whether you did something similar or you did not do something similar. And how you went wrong or how you did it rightly. And now that I've gone wrong, I'm going to do it correctly. This is how it's going to be done. So you're critical of it. So you will automatically get the next green tick also. It is a critical one. You criticized your own ministry. Please don't criticize any other ministry. They will mark you wrong, okay? They are expecting you to critique your own ministry, your own thinking. So in your ministry reflection, there is always critical aspect for me. How you did your ministry in the past with the context of what we have spoken in the body of the text, and how we are going to change the way we do ministry in the future. Maybe we have followed some parts of it. Maybe we are showing that, hey, I did all these things in the past, and these are the results I got, but I think I did not reach the full capacity because I missed out on these things. Now in the future, I am going to start working on this. Or currently I'm using these things, but I think I should add these things also as I have studied in this course. That's how a ministry reflection should be written. The next is creative. Does it show? Now, creative, critical, and collaborative, any one of this you should meet, okay? There's not compulsory that you should meet all 3. Okay? You don't need to meet all 3. If you are creative, does it show a unique or personal style in its format? You have built your whole paper in such a way, it is so unique. You've got nice pictures inside, charts inside. Does it use graphics, original charts, or other media? Does it have specific literary effects, such as original alliteration or particularly clever phrasing? Have you compared it with something else? Okay. Now somebody said parachurch and church are like 2 tracks of the railway track. That's a good alliteration. But unfortunately, what happens, it doesn't fit into the original paradigm. So you will actually contradict the original paradigm. But the idea is good. Alliteration is good. Okay, clever phrasing, something like that. Critical. Does it use standards of the competency as points of reference for evaluation? That means you have evaluated your ministry based on what you have learned. Does it show exercise of judgment, wisdom regarding options? For instance, does the ministry reflection include assessment of ministry experience based upon the standards related to the competency? That's exactly said. So ministry reflection and critical is always collected. If you write a very good ministry reflection, automatically your critical idea will be met. Do we need to have charts always? No. You can have a good way of writing. Good literary styles you can use. That is also good as creative. But I'll show you some charts that we can create. Collaboration. Does it show the interrelationship of one's ministry with other individuals, organizations, and networks rather than individual independence? Note that doing collaborative work with others on the document to be uploaded is not necessarily what is meant by collaboration. It is not about you sitting together and writing a paper. That's not the collaboration. That means in your presentation of your competency, you have shown that you have engaged with some other ministry, or you have engaged with some other things, and that presentation would fulfill collaborative criteria. Let me repeat again: creative, critical, and collaborative. You need to meet one of them. Okay. Now let me repeat this. The first 6: clarity, complete, accurate, supported, resource interaction, and ministry reflection is compulsory. Your document that you're presenting as your competency expression must meet these 6 criteria. Okay. And should meet one of these 3: creative, critical, or collaborative. This is what you need to keep open when you do your own evaluation. Don't just put your ticks and send it to the evaluator. You need to see whether it is meeting the criteria. Now, you could create a buddy system among yourselves. Choose a buddy among yourselves. Now I know who Suma can choose as buddy, that is Najib. Other than that, so probably Joseph and Bindu can have that buddy system. For those who are not there with your spouses, you can create buddy systems with yourselves, and where you can do your personal one-to-one evaluation and then submit. So you have evaluated, you got your friend to evaluate it, and then you are submitted to the cloud. Please, you are open to do that. Many people do that. Okay, don't send it to me because I should be doing it on the cloud. But if you have a doubt, you can call me when you're writing your competency. I'll be happy to clear your doubt. But don't send it to me for evaluating. I would do it on the cloud for you, and Bill will do it for you. Go through the process of me and the Bill, Bill, and let it come back to you. And don't get it as a rejection. Don't take it as a rejection. It's just a learning process. Okay. So some of you would have missed something. So we will send it back to you so that you can. Why are you writing this competency, and why is it put on the cloud? Because it is your portfolio of your understanding and learning which you can give to the next generation. It is an asset that you are creating. Please look at it like that. Don't write it for getting the green ticks. Build your own asset of your faith and your understanding of scriptures that you can live for the next generation. Okay. So any doubts on these issues? Any doubts on these issues with regard to how to write the competency? Is it clear for you better when you write your competency, how it meets all these criteria? And when it meets all these criteria for you, and then you are submitting to the cloud, we are able to see that you have actually evaluated it. Does that make it more helpful for you to now look at it, how to build it? Yes, brother, Pastor Lemu. Yes, absolutely. But I think this should help you build your competency very well.
Is this document available, Pastor?
Yes, yes. Suma should be having that document, but I'm going to cut paste it in the chat just now so that you can have it on the chat itself. Okay, I put it on the chat. Najib brother, are you able to see it on the chat? Yeah, the WhatsApp chat. Okay, so I would suggest you to build a buddy system so that you have your own. Some of you have sub cohorts where you are studying in the sub cohorts because you are struggling like in getting things done or moving forward. So form sub cohorts and encourage one another and move forward. So today we looked at how unit 2 should be done, how you should evaluate it, and how you should be presenting this thing. I've built a whole philosophy for you again, so that you are not going off track when you present your this thing. Don't do it to get the green tick. Don't somehow put everything and just make one document and send it to the evaluator. Because if there is no flow, if you can't understand, we're just going to say, I can't understand. There's no clarity, there's not complete, or it's not accurate, it's not supported. There's no ministry reflection, there is no resource interaction. Your ministry reflection is not appropriate to what you've written. So there's so many ways that we will look at it and send it back. That means it has to meet those criteria. Even if I miss it, and I agree because I really love you all, and I clear it off, Bill will not clear it. Bill, his name is Bill Burns. He will burn it and send it back to you. Okay, so I think it's a fantastic way to learn. Everything is transparent, everything is objective, and it's I think a fantastic learning experience if we can go through it. So all of you who have not done unit 2, all of you have not done, well, can I just take one call? Meanwhile, you can all continue your discussions. I just need to take an urgent call.
I'm actually having issues with my audio, so I've connected audio from my phone. I mean, any troubleshooting things, because suddenly last Sunday during service it went off, and then I was actually speaking, and then nobody was able to hear in the middle of the message. So, I mean, anyone has faced similar issue before, and it's only from my laptop. So, and it was working all along well. Suddenly,
You're showing mute on your Zoom right now, but you're
yeah. Actually, when I'm unmuting from my Zoom, it's not recognizing that I'm speaking. So that is why I've connected, phone audio so that I can speak through the phone.
Najib, he's on 2 windows now. He's got 2 Zoom accesses now.
okay.
What I suggest is, so this happens normally in Zoom meetings. So what you should do is you exit the Zoom and get back to it again.
Okay, I tried that also. It didn't work. Maybe I should try restarting once.
Yeah, sometimes it may not work, but it will work. Do it a couple of times because we have had similar issues during our Zoom meeting, wherein you will not be you have connected to the audio, but you will not be audible to others. So what we do is in such a situation, what we do is we recommend them to exit altogether and restart from the beginning.
Okay.
Go to the audio settings, and in that you can test your mic. You can test your if the audio video button is there. If you press that, you get your video and audio settings. In the audio settings, you test your mic, and it will play back to you. So
I tried that. Actually, now it is not playing it back. Then I tried troubleshooting also. It said it couldn't.
The adapter is gone. Maybe the adapter is gone on the laptop.
Okay, I'll check on that. Yeah. Thank you.
So today I did a full review of how to write the competencies, how we need to evaluate it, what is the philosophy of the Antioch school, what are they trying to do with us, so that you can write excellent competencies. That's what we're trying to demonstrate, or excellent competencies. Is there any doubt for all of you in anything that we have spoken today, so that I can figure it out?
No, George, is what we will make a lot of critical comments, right, about the way things are going, like about what people are preaching, how people have drifted away from the original Great Commission and things like that. It's okay now. So we will be mentioning Parachita.
No, we don't mention names. We don't mention names and criticize.
No.
We will be critical generally from the paradigm perspective.
No, like for instance, like say I'll tell you. So now I want to be critical about the prosperity kind of teaching. So I will make a mention of that. So I will not be mentioning any particular
ministry or name. Don't mention any ministry or name. It's a general comment you are making in comparison with the original paradigm. How
lot of critical things will be there, because especially this particular article.
Yes.
There's going to be a lot of critical input.
Yeah, Pastor, but the critical part would be in your ministry reflection, where you're in the ministry reflection, you are criticizing your own ministry.
Yeah, that we understood. Yeah.
And so in that way, in your writing of your article, you can criticize current philosophies, current models in comparison with the original paradigm model. So, but you're not naming, okay, we're not saying Joel Osteen, or we're not saying Derek Prince, or we're not saying that ministry or this ministry, or Paul Tangaya, or, we're not going to mention any names. We don't mention any ministry names. But we can criticize philosophies, existing philosophies or things like that. Bye, Pastor John. Are you able to get it when I say critical? All right, good. I think it is. Please.
Yes, in critical, as in, I think the last competency I wrote, I think most of the things I kind of agreed with what I was doing, as in terms of we are already in the right path, and as a church we are going on the correct path. Is that also okay, or do they expect at least 1 or 2 points to be?
Yeah. I mean, if you are going in the paradigm and you are looking at what you have written, and your current ministry is following some of those things, you have to tell how it is aligning with the paradigm that you have written.
Okay.
So that is okay. That's not critical, but that is substantiating that is a proper ministry reflection.
Okay. Yeah.
Any other queries, questions? I'll just pray and close. So then we can continue on. Pastor Sindhyapan, would you just pray and close so others can stay back, and we want any discussions can do. People who have to leave can leave.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for these, Lord, beautiful teachings and the process of learning that we are engaged in. Lord, we thank you for Dr. George and even this Bill Ministries, and who have put in so much of labor and efforts. Lord, we pray that each and every one of us, Lord, will be able to truly learn and change the way that we are functioning. Lord, that we'll be able to conform ourselves to the Word of God and to the model and the original plan and purpose as revealed in your Word. So speak to us, O God, and it will not be just our head knowledge, but we'll be able to, Lord, bring it into our practical lives and in the ministry that we are doing. We pray, dear God, we'll also be able to, Lord, take this, Lord, teaching to many others around us in our own New Life Fellowship, Lord, that we'll be able to bring about the clarity as to how we need to minister and how, Lord, that the church, the local church has the mandate to, Lord, to multiply, Lord, and establish other churches. We thank you for this day and we give ourselves into your hands. We bless you and we worship you. In Jesus' name we pray.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Pastor. So you are free to leave. If any of you have any queries, questions, I'll be here for another 10 or 15 minutes more so that I can help you.
First, the next week's this one, like we have to go through all the 3 articles, so we'll be kind of discussing all the 3 issues. Right?
Yeah,
Because
we
2
will.
issues
Yes, there are 3
important.
articles that all of you need to read. There were 2 weeks to do that. Okay, it's not 1 week. You have 2 weeks to do that. So you should come prepared with the 3 articles. But even if we do 1 or 2 articles, presentation is fine. We're not. It's not like we're we're deadline based. We are trying to keep certain deadlines so that we can finish the course in a reasonable time. But yes, all of you should come prepared, having read those 3 articles, so that you can make substantial contribution. Our rule is, if you have not read the article, please do not ask questions or involve in the discussions. If you have read the articles, then you will contribute with the constructively into the program. Otherwise, it will create a mess. Because the person who is talking or discussing has an idea from the article, but the person who has not read it will talk from his feelings and emotions and his experience, which will clearly distort the whole thing. So please read the 3 articles. They are brilliant articles. The first article, I think, who is doing it? Somebody. I think the first article is going to be done by. First article is presented by Pastor Bindu. Pastor Bindu is going to do it. So that's a very critical article. Very critical article. That article's name is Church Planning Strategy, the Pauline Cycle, David Hasselgrave. It's like foundation to your whole course. That's a very key article. So Pastor Bindu's article is going to be critical, that we all need to read and come. There is not like Pastor Bindu is doing it, so we will, so we will all read and come. Second article is Introduction to Missionary Methods, St. Paul's or Ours, Roland Allen. It's a nice article. Jerusalem to Antioch to the World, a Biblical Mission Strategy, David Niringia. And it's interesting, he's from an African background, and that's very good view to see, like like Najib brother was saying about seeing it from other paradigms. This is from an African paradigm. Very beautiful, very interesting to read. All right, if no other queries, we can close for today.
Yeah, so just one last thing, Pastor, regarding the competency, as in normally it takes a week or so, no, Pastor, to get back. And yeah, so
get back means after you submit it?
Yeah, after I submit, Pastor, as in
yeah,
any area, or because sometimes I feel it comes back almost immediately, sometimes it takes time, so maybe.
So I will do it immediately, but Bill takes his time. Bill has probably handling the whole, he may be having cohorts from all over the world. Antioch is functioning in so many countries. So there are few evaluators. That's why they're raising more evaluators, associate faculties, and I'm also under training. So he will have his time gap, US holidays and all of those things, but he's also pretty fast compared to others. So you should get back within a week or 2 weeks.
Okay.
So what you do during that time is spend time reading the articles for the next, write your ministry practicum, write your life and write your map. till you get this back. That doesn't mean that you stop your course. That's the beauty about this course. There's so many things that can be done. After you submit unit 2 and unit 3, articles can be read. One. Second thing, you can do your map. You can do your ministry. When Suma sister send her ministry practicum. So that's nice. I mean, she's doing her life and map whenever she's relatively free. So there's plenty of work that can be moved around. But within 1 to 2 weeks, I almost do it instantly. The moment it comes as a mail to me, and I will immediately get on it, evaluate it, and send it to build because I'm the certified leader. I'll do it also as an associate faculty trainee, but then it will go to my associate faculty coach who will tell whether my evaluation is good or not. That process takes a time because Bill may be taking his own, having his own challenges in terms of time management because he's handling so many people. He's also going through each of your material.
So when you send it, sometimes like I think last time for the competency 2, I didn't see comments, but when you send it to Bill Burns, are there separate comments that you would be sending? Or
Yes. There is a conversation between the trainee and the coach at our level.
Okay.
Any other queries you have? All right.
Good.
See you all. Bye-bye. God bless you. I'll send the recording so that, you can review it if you want.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Have a great day.